Hey everybody, Nick Espinosa, your chief security fanatic here, and today we actually have to talk about a new research study coming out of Imperva talking about bots because quite frankly it's been reinforcing something that I've been writing about and talking about here on this podcast and video and also on my nationally syndicated radio show for months now. Now, here's what's going on because nearly half of all activity online is the work of automated bots rather than humans, according to this study. Apparently, the proportion of human activity online is at the lowest level it's ever been in 8 years, with AI-powered bots rapidly, quote-unquote, taking over the internet. And obviously with that, we've got spam, we've got crime, etc., etc. Now, the researchers at Imperva also claim that 2020 saw a huge increase in this kind of activity online, with 47.4% of all internet traffic coming from bots rather than humans. They warn that bad bots or those that send junk mail or steal data, etc., make up 66% of this 66.6% of this traffic, or 2/3, and it's going to get worse thanks to obviously the newer AI technologies like the chat GPTs of the world. So if you're breaking this down, 2/3 of half of all traffic is over 1/3 of all traffic basically going around the internet right now is essentially malicious, from junk mail all the way to delivering ransomware and everything in between. Now, their report also highlighted how these bots are being used in cyber warfare, with attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure services increasing by as much as 145% in early 2022. The Russian intelligence and Russian cutouts have always been leveraging bots. That is not a new thing at all. And so that really is honestly stands to reason that, as we are increasing with the LLMs, the chat GPTs of the world, we're going to see an increase of this. And because Russia's actively engaged in a kinetic war with Ukraine, their cyber warfare is going to follow along. So I'm surprised it's that low at 145% increase. Now, the true presence of online bots on social media, for example, was one of the major sticking points for Elon Musk during his negotiations to buy Twitter. And I'll talk about that in a second, because Musk threatened to pull out of the deal unless Twitter provided more figures on the number of bots, but ultimately agreed to buy the platform due to a impending lawsuit for $44 billion. And here's the thing. Musk now realizes and understands, as he probably did before he purchased a company, as Twitter did, as Facebook did, etc., that you can't get rid of all bots on those platforms. And here's why. So assume for a moment, and we'll use easy numbers, that your social media platform has 100 million users. We know that there's way more on Twitter and Facebook, etc., but let's say it's 100 million users. Now, if you are looking at this as a social media platform, you are giving something free, quote unquote, to essentially your user base. In exchange, you are data mining the ever-living bejesus out of them, and in turn, turning that data over to advertisers who then can more aggressively target you. So, in other words, let's say of that 100 million, half of the human population on there says, you know what, I'm really into, Ford cars, underwater basket weaving, whatever it is. Now they're getting that information, they're giving it over to the Ford Motor Company, or they're giving it to underwater basket weavers who are paying for this to go ahead and advertise underwater basket weaving services or Ford Mustangs or, whatever it is. And so by virtue of that, the more numbers you have on the platform, the more people that are going to potentially see these advertisements, because the more people will potentially be into whatever it is that the advertiser is trying to sell. Now, imagine if the actual bot count was 50% of the platform. Now, you've got a much less pool, because bots are not going to go buy Ford Mustangs, but humans are. And so when you're targeting 50 million, the advertisers are not going to pay nearly as much, because there's going to be less eyeballs and less data mining, on their advertising. So this is essentially what we are talking about. These social media platforms need the bots, but at the same token, we have a huge problem. And I've written about this at least in 2 different articles in the last 6 months, and if not talked about this, that we are going to see, thanks to chat GPT and other LLMs out there, a supercharging of these bots. So we are basically breaking reality as it stands. So imagine these, large language models, these generative AIs, creating fake news websites with hundreds of fake articles every day, nonstop, 24 hours a day, basically focused on whatever an intelligence agency says to say this. We'll look at a futuristic election in 2028, which I've written about before. And this was the example that, future candidate X in 2028 is now accused of murdering somebody 20 years ago and trying to cover it up. And now you've got hundreds of bots writing hundreds of news articles on hundreds of different sites, not to mention the thousands to millions of bots that will now challenge your perception of reality. So when one of these fake news articles comes out, and I, as a user on Twitter, said, no, I don't think that's right, I don't know the source, Now you've got people, basically quote unquote people, but all bots speaking, good English, speaking essentially the language well. And so they're saying, no, you're wrong. Here's another source. Here's another source. Here's another source. I heard over here. I heard over here, because they're all programmed to target and spread this kind of information. I start to question my reality at some point, because I think other humans are finding stuff I am not, and I don't want to be left behind. This is a psychological problem that we have, and this is what we are talking about. And if we are looking at 50% or almost 50% last year, and it's increasing, thanks to the Chat GPTs and other LLMs of the world, we're going to basically be a minority online, and who we're interacting with, odds are, may not be human, even though it sounds and interacts and, quite frankly, reasons fairly close to what humans do, and then is backed up by a multitude of fake information that it's consistently saying is real, as it's the other bots that it is basically arguing and debating with in front of me, as they're all part of this chat thread, all now pushing me to a conclusion that is demonstrably false. That is what we are walking into. That is a perception, of reality that, quite frankly, kills reality. And so we're going to see where this goes, but I think this is very concerning. And so that is your news of the day. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well, where you're going to get 100% Nick, 0% bots every time, although they're probably watching anyway. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private. Thanks, everybody.